Welcome back to the report. Over the last year in Nigeria, the fighter group Boko Haram has hit the headlines after being involved in the kidnappings of more than 200 schoolgirls and attacks on various towns in the country's northeastern region. However, what has been largely unreported are the crimes committed by the Nigerian government of President Goodluck Jonathan. Afsal Ahmed has more on this story.
Following a series of accusations which have blighted the Nigerian establishment in recent months, a new report this week accuses the Nigerian police and military of routinely torturing its citizens using a wide range of brutal methods. These include beatings, nail and tooth extractions, electric shocks, and sexual violence. The report by the human rights group Amnesty International says that torture has become such an integral part of policing in Nigeria that many stations have an informal officer in charge of torture. In one illustrative incident, a woman called Abozedi spoke of her experience.
A policewoman took me into a small room, told me to remove everything I was wearing. She spread my legs wide and fired tear gas. I was asked to confess that I was an armed robber. I was bleeding. Up until now, I still feel pain in my womb.
In another incident, 33-year-old Musa was arrested for being a suspected member of Boko Haram. He spoke of a place nicknamed Guantanamo in Damaturu in northeastern Nigeria.
In Guantanamo, 1 or 2 people die every one day. The soldiers will walk on us with their boots. They'll beat us in the morning and keep us in the cells all day. It's very hot in the cells, no ventilation, no space to move our legs. They give us food only once a day.
Reacting to the report, the Nigerian police said in a statement that the Nigerian police take serious exceptions to some blatant falsehoods and innuendos contained in that report. The report covered a 7-year period of 2007 to 2014. I dare say that some of the issues raised have since been dispensed with and settled. Of a truth, torture or ill treatment is not an official policy of the Nigeria police. The Nigerian constitution bans torture, but the country has no law making it illegal or punishable. The government say they are aware of the problem and have set up at least 5 presidential committees and working groups over the past 10 years to reform the criminal justice system. In a political frenzy where government opponents such as the fighter group Boko Haram, who are demonized and accused of atrocities, are we overlooking similar hidden abuses that the Nigerian establishment are themselves committing? Afsal Ahmed, The Report, Islam Channel.
Well, to discuss this, I'm joined in the studio by Makmid Kamara, who's the West Africa researcher at Amnesty International, and by Ayo Johnson, freelance journalist. So welcome to the programme, both of you. That's a pretty stunning report, pretty horrendous report. What do you make of the denials from the Nigerian police saying that you didn't talk to Amnesty, didn't talk to them, and that all this is in the past, although I see it covers events up to this year?
Well, first of all, it's not true that Amnesty did not talk to the Nigerian authorities, because we've had several engagements with the Nigerian authorities over the years. We've written to them, we've shared the summary, the key findings of our research with them, and like he said in the press release that these are not true. These are the kind of usual lines we get from the Nigerian authorities. But we have evidence, and this is the report is a combination or compilation of interviews that we've conducted with over 500 people across Nigeria. We have strong documentary as well as visual evidence to show that these acts are actually being carried out by the Nigerian security forces. And we are surprised that the Nigerian authorities are actually coming up with such statement, because we think that this is no time for them to deny. It is time to actually put the necessary steps and measures in place to ensure that torture is not only prevented, but also those who are victims of torture receive judicial as well as practical remedies.
And just to be clear, it seems that the report is documenting something which is widespread and systemic. I mean, when you're talking about unofficial officers in police stations for this, it's reached a sort of epidemic level, is it not?
It is. The findings of our research shows that it is a routine. It is an intrinsic part of the criminal investigation process in Nigeria, and it cuts across not just within the military but also with the police, and which is why the severity of it has deepened and the scope of it has widened. And we think that the Nigerian government has a responsibility now to ensure that they not only come out and issue rhetorics, but they also take actions, concrete actions, to ensure that the ordinary citizens of Nigeria, people in Nigeria, have systems in place to ensure that when they are arrested for crimes, whether they commit the crimes or they are accused of committing a crime, there are systems in place to prevent them from being tortured by the law enforcement agencies. And also, if they get tortured in detention, there's a system to ensure that they receive remedies.
Do you think we're seeing here a kind of Nigerian version of what happened in Bagram Air Base or in Guantanamo Bay, where the sort of rhetoric of the war on terror creates a political atmosphere in which those who are trying to deal with the terrorists are beyond the law or think themselves to be so?
Well, what we do know is that Guantanamo Bay clearly is one of the worst places, and that example being shown now, especially with Nigeria, this report clearly shows that Nigeria has to acknowledge, accept, and try and do something to rid of itself, as it has done with corruption over a period of time, with rebranding exercise, try and rid itself of this problem. This is the problem that goes back as far as 10 years. This report was not just done overnight. And clearly you must look at the Boko Haram issue going as far back as that long. Only shows that a country like Nigeria should do far better, but above and beyond, the human rights issues are at stake, and very much the security forces who have been allowed to apply themselves in this fashion have got to be stopped.
In Amnesty's view, is this something which is, certainly stretches back a long time, as Ayo was saying, but is there an atmosphere created by the whole sort of rhetoric of the war on terror which facilitates or makes these people believe that they don't have to abide by normal police procedure or indeed stay within the law or the Constitution?
Our research on Nigeria, especially on civil and political rights issues in Nigeria, shows that there's an increasing level of impunity in the country, and a lot of people are taking the law into their hands, and these are both state and non-state actors. And if you've been following Nigeria, you'll know that it started in the Niger Delta with the militants, and now we have Boko Haram. But we also have the situation within the Nigerian security forces, where ordinary soldiers or police officers will conduct arrests. There are a lot of cases of arbitrary arrests and dragnet arrests, incommunicado detention, enforced disappearances. And these are all indications of a country that has lost control of the criminal justice system. And we think these problems are as a result of the fact that there's no proper checks and balances. People don't account for crimes that they commit. And even when people are brought to court, the court systems are extremely slow, and people don't have trust in the courts, in the normal court system. So you have a lot of cases where people decide to take the law into their own hands rather than following the due processes, and that's what we have seen. And that is the worry, and that's why Amnesty International is calling on the Nigerian authorities to ensure that they take all lawful measures to, first of all, set up the systems. Pass this law. The anti-torture law has been in the National Assembly for over 2 years now, and it has not been debated and not been passed. So we think that they have to step up their efforts and ensure that when people commit crimes, perpetrators who commit crimes are brought to justice in a fair trial without recourse to the death penalty.
Do you think the Nigerian government has the political capacity or the political will to deal with this?
And that's just the word, will. Does it have the energy, the drive? Goodluck Jonathan, I'm afraid, would have to step up. This is way beyond what we've seen in the past before, and the usual excuses cannot be accepted anymore. Clearly, the judiciary has got to be strengthened. Clearly, some level of law and order has got to be applied, and very much so, something that will reel back some of the powers that the security forces clearly have at will to be able to do this against their own citizens. I think you're looking at a long-term resolution to this, because I think Goodluck Jonathan would have to make sure that the mechanisms are in place through legislation, and also we do know the legislature is very slow in Nigeria for them to be able to speed up and have reforms enough for us to see some changes on the ground, meaningful changes, if I may say.
I mean, in your last answer, you were saying that the due process simply isn't there. The means of legal redress simply aren't there, and that therefore people sometimes take things into their own hands. Is it one of the things that's fueling support, such as it is for Boko Haram, that the state is so broken in this way?
It's, like you said, one of the many reasons, and it's the whole conflict in the north is kind of convoluted. You can't pinpoint on one particular reason, but the lack of a very effective justice system is one of those reasons. And if you go back to 2009, when the founder of Boko Haram was killed in police custody, it's as a result of the collapse of and the disregard for due process. He was arrested by police officers, interrogated, and in the process, he was shot and killed. And this was publicly made known to the Nigerian public, and people saw that if the police can do this and go scot-free, those people have not been tried, they've not been brought to justice. And it kind of fueled that bitterness. And you also have other reasons. It is not a justification for people to kill. It is not a justification for Boko Haram fighters to go and attack schools or abduct school children from their schools. It is not a justification for armed robbers to commit armed robbery. It just shows the collapse in the law and criminal justice system, and it shows that the Nigerian government, like Ayo said, needs to step up. They need to go beyond making promises, void promises that they don't fulfill. They need to actually take concrete steps and lawful measures to not only follow Nigeria's national obligations, but also their international human rights and international law obligations.
I mean, what do you expect of the sort of international media here? Because, you know, we've had, and people might argue correctly, we've had, you know, chapter and verse on the evils of Boko Haram. This story, how far do you expect this one to travel?
It will travel far. Amnesty International is a recognised civil society movement worldwide. That said, the title of the report itself sends the sort of signals that clearly Nigeria is a dangerous place. And of course, the government themselves acknowledging and accepting that is one thing. But above and beyond that, I think it would be embarrassing. And Goodluck Jonathan would want to rid of him. And if he wants this to go away, he knows what he needs to do. He needs to reform. He needs to bring changes very quickly. The question is, does he have the will? Will the Nigerian political machine allow him to do so? That's questionable. And is Nigeria truly ready for this level of reforms which are required if we're to see real change?
What kind of response do you expect to the report? Because, you know, the main players in the international state system are kind of, you know, for them, Boko Haram is the enemy they need to deal with, and this is the government that's dealing with them. So how much of a hearing do you expect criticism of that government to get among the major states?
Well, we think that the international community needs to also be more serious and be more firm with Nigeria. We've raised our concerns with a lot of governments and in the EU and in the US and other countries that work with Nigeria. And we think that they have a responsibility to not only remind Nigeria of its international obligations, but also ensure that they promotes the human rights within that country as part of the international, part of the global village. And we think that governments outside Nigeria have a role to play, you know, speak to Nigeria, be more sincere with the governments rather than just play diplomacy around it, because these are people's lives we're dealing with. This is not about ordinary diplomacy and patting people's back. The Nigerian government needs to be told in clear terms, in unequivocal terms, that what is going on in Nigeria is simply unacceptable, and they need to take all the necessary lawful measures to ensure that the people of Nigeria are protected, are provided with adequate security from human rights abuses and violations by both state and non-state actors.
Okay, well, that's a fascinating insight into a little reported story. But I'm afraid we're going to have to move on now. As an IS video...